I knew I was different around the age of 2, by the age of 2 or 3, because I have a brother who's older, and he's 19 months older. And he is sort of like the embodiment of testosterone. To this day, all boy, all the time. Trucks, balls, army men, cavalry, this kind of thing. I mean, he just gravitated to that. And I gravitated towards shiny, pretty things and Disney princesses. And it became very clear to me around the age of 2 that one of these things is not like the other. And I knew that I just knew that when I gravitated towards the things that were interesting or fascinating to me, I got a very sharp response from my parents. And it was anything ranging from frustration to outright hostility and aggression or humiliation. And so I began to associate that every time I go to what I like, I get severely rebuked, that this is not a good thing. That's when I became aware that try as I might, because I knew I was supposed to like balls and trucks and army men and basketball and all of that. It's like, can I read my Cinderella book one more time? I mean, what do you want me to do? So I knew that was there, and it only deepened. I have a younger sister, and she got a Barbie doll at one point, and I was so fascinated with that, but I knew I had to play with that or deal with that or take it out in secret when no one else was around, because I knew I would get that response. So I knew then that I was different. And then around 12, 13, when hormones start kicking in and things start happening, it took me a while to put it together. I knew that there was an attraction to men. I don't think I really put it together that it really meant gay until I was maybe a senior in high school or freshman in college. But I was sort of, I'd been raised to believe that, the normal course of things is that you get married and have a family and da-da-da-da-da. So I was convinced that that's what's going to happen. I was going to get married and have a family, and it would feel better once I did it, and because that's just the plan. There was a period where wearing pink Oxford cloth shirts was kind of cool, and I wouldn't touch pink to save my life, right? Because I didn't want to do anything that would identify me as anything other than. So because I didn't want to do that, I would scrutinize the way I walked and who I waved to and how I waved to them. And I would lie about, like, my big thing growing up, like Diana Ross and the Supremes were like my fave raves. And I hid it. I lied about it constantly, because to me it felt like if people knew that they would associate that with gay, and my secret would be out. So it wasn't that I went the other way in terms of over-butching it. I just sort of grayed myself out, I'd say. It developed such an extreme self-consciousness about everything I did, right? Who I was with and what I wore and what movies I saw, and or even could say that I liked or was interested. Everything, I was turning everything over in my head, right? Because this was not who I was supposed to be. Right? That was who I was supposed to be. My first crush, I was in the 5th grade, there was a guy in the 6th grade. And he was my first crush. And we were friends and we played at each other's houses, this kind of thing. But he was in my brother's grade, so it was like he was friends with my brother too, and it was sort of, and there was an incident in elementary school. We had to make these hearts with, tissue paper flowers pasted on them for our mothers, or Valentine's Day or something like that, or Mother's Day, one of those two. And so I made one for my mom, and Happy Mother's Day or whatever it is. I wrote that. And I don't to this day understand why I did what I did, but I had him sign the back of it. Yeah, I know. I don't understand it either, but I did, because I had a crush on him, right? And so I took it home and I gave it to my mother, and she noticed that this guy had signed the back of it, and she flew into a rage. What does this mean? He's like he's your boyfriend. I mean, she just went off. And I knew, because I felt such shame about it, that I had done something so abysmally out of line that, I can still recall how painful that was. Like that I had shot the Pope or something. I had done something beyond just a minor infraction, or that I had violated the order of the universe almost. I remember feeling that. So I hid it, or I tried to hide it. Probably not as successfully as I think I did. I mean, because there were people who would make comments, or I was called fag in high school and this kind of thing. I've always been ashamed sort of the way I speak. Even now when I watch myself on video, I sort of shrink inside myself like, oh my God, that's how I sound like. But what are you gonna do? That's how I sound like. I mean, I got used to it, I guess, but I don't like it because it sounds too effeminate to me. And I still have that kind of internalized homophobia about certain aspects of the way I present, the way I come across in public. At one point I went to seminary to get my graduate degree. My secret agenda was I was going to seminary so that my thought was if I get closer to God, then He would heal me. I would be rewarded. And when I was in seminary, I met a man who started, a conversion therapy and ex-gay ministry here in Los Angeles, the largest one at the time. And he was in my class, and he had written a book, and he gave me this book, and I read the book, and I thought, oh, this is me, because his book was called The Healing of the Homosexual. So I joined his organization. I ended up being an international speaker for the organization. And so I saw most of Europe on their dime. But the cost of it was I saw most of Europe, and I had to talk about how you can be healed of homosexual feelings, through the grace of God and through prayer and on and on. We ran programs and this kind of thing, and I did that. I was with Desert Stream for 7 years, probably 4 years doing the speaking thing. I was dating a woman in Northern California, not very often. We saw each other once a month. She would come down to LA, or I would go up to her place. And the third month or the fourth month, she wanted to take me to see her favorite musical, which is Phantom of the Opera, which I cannot stand. But that's a whole other story, because I hadn't seen it by then, but I'm thinking, oh, okay, whatever. So we go to San Francisco, to that theater, whatever that theater is on Market Street, and we park and we're walking, and I'm holding her hand, and we're walking down Market Street to go to the theater, and I'm really aware that after 4 months of dating this woman, that I'm still cruising the gay couples that are walking by me. And I'm like, sorry, this shit don't work. I mean, like, oh, it's been 7 years and this shit don't work. What is up with that? Like, this should not be happening. And yet it's just happening because I'm not doing anything to stop it. But I was painfully aware of that. So that 2 months later, I broke up with her. No, I left the ex-gay ministry on July the 4th and July the 3rd and broke up with her on July the 4th of that same year. I need to this is not going anywhere. It was actually a really hard process because most of my close friends or people I did things socially with were Asian American Christian couples, right? I knew almost no gay people. I had a couple of people I knew through the gym, but I didn't socialize much with them, but I knew almost no gay people whatsoever. And so, one by one, I began to tell those people that I had been going to church with for 17 years. And all of them were pretty cool about it. And I'm friends with almost all of them to this day. There was one person who felt like he had to withdraw, which was fine. I mean, 1 out of maybe 30, which is fine, But I was very intentional and very careful about how I did those things. And I was always very nervous about it. But what happened in that time period is because these were the people who were my social circle. When I came out and told them that I was gay, because they had no exposure to other gay people, they didn't know what to do with me. They didn't know how to talk to me. And I'd spent a lot of my 20s and 30s listening to their stories about falling in love and getting married and having babies and sending them off to preschool and elementary school and all of that, right? And I just sat there and listened to poop story after poop story and thinking, this doesn't reflect my life at all. But when it came time for me, to talk about where I had come, they didn't know how to do that. So they didn't know how to ask me so I'd go to these gatherings and nobody would ask me anything about anything. It's like they didn't know how to touch it. And so I felt really alone. It was like being in a free fall, like I had no touchstones. My parents, they had a woman in their Sunday school class, Charlotte Weary, whose second son had died of AIDS. And she was very vocal about it. And she was very unapologetic about it. And she would defend her son and his life choices at the drop of a hat. She was very proud of him. And I think that normalized having a gay son to my parents, because they knew someone else who had a gay son, which is a very Japanese way of doing things, right? But I think that my parents really were more accepting than I actually perceived them to be. I hadn't updated a lot of my thinking about them from those very critical, harsh, humiliating days. I'd sort of kept that image of them in my head. So part of that was me projecting on them that they would be. So that's why it took as long as it did, I think. The guy I was dating at the time actually met my mother on the Mother's Day, the day before we found out she had stage 4 lung cancer. And so he actually met her. She didn't seem to grasp the idea that he was my boyfriend. I kept telling her that, but she kept saying, who is he now? So I'm not sure she grasped it, but she met him. The rest of my family has met. They were able to meet him either at GMCLA concerts or that kind of thing. I went to a Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles concert, and I had 2 friends who sang in the organization at the time. And both of them said, you should audition for this. That scares the hell out of me. But I did it, and they accepted me, and I've been in there for 19 years. It is sort of the perfect combination of all the things that I am. It's creative, it's an advocate organization, it's political. We can make political statements, but we do it through music. We can support the community, like we just sang last weekend at the Greek Theater at the LA LGBTQ Center's 50th anniversary celebration. And that's just a joy to show up and to say, hey, we're part of this community. And it's more my church, I say this, than any other organization I am involved with at this stage of the game. There's a man, his name is Kenji Yoshino, and I don't know if he's half Japanese or full Japanese American, but he wrote a book called Covering. And it's ostensibly about how those of us who are minorities develop ways of covering up, hiding behind, in order to fit in with the dominant culture. And because Kenji Yoshino is both Japanese American and gay, I devoured the book. And to this day, refer back to it. I already knew that I was different outwardly. I already knew that I couldn't change that. I already knew that it impacted me because our church did a production of The Sound of Music, and I was so stoked, but they would not consider putting me in as one of the Von Trapp family children so they could make me an Israeli shepherd boy in A Mall in the Night Visitors, but I couldn't play an Austrian, whatever. And I'm like, what? I didn't get that. I didn't understand that, right? But I knew that meant being different. And I knew that being different meant that there were certain things that were not available to me. And so the gay thing was just compounded that. I already knew that I was different. I already had developed ways of coping with that difference. I I'm not sure I developed very good ways of coping with the shame of that difference, but at least it was not an unfamiliar feeling to me. And so learning to embrace both parts of my identity, not always in equal measure, but again, it's not an exercise that I'm unfamiliar with. And the other situation is this, I'm a psychologist, I deal in those kinds of things. I'm used to going into environments and not being mirrored. I don't expect it, I don't feel entitled to it. I can find a way to function in a context where no one else is like me. And I know how to do that. And I just developed that ability to do that, to walk in and do the best that I can, to show up and just be as much of me as I could be without curtailing too many of the differences, just sort of, well, this is how it. And so as a gay man, it's an interesting thing because the gay community in Los Angeles is very white-centric and very unaware. Very unaware. It's kind of shocking to me how unaware, right? And that kind of thing, that if I am going to traffic in those environments, that in some way I have to orient around the dominant culture. And I'm more sensitive to that now, because there are times when I say, oh, hell no. I don't have to do that. I don't want to do that. Sing out, Louise. Hello. I hid so many parts of myself away for so long. And, even in the last 20 years, being able to actually discover the joy of living out loud, there was so much fear associated with living out loud that it didn't really occur to me that there was a kind of a unique joy associated with that, and the kind of sense of internal integration that can happen. I always say this, Joni Mitchell did an interview with Rolling Stone in 1975. And she has this one line in there that stuck with me ever since I read it. And she said, I'm always looking to get thrilled. And I just thought that mirrored me, that I'm always looking to get thrilled. I don't want to just get by. I don't want to just get through life and roll through and do all right. And I want to get thrilled. I could say that my involvement in Okaeri is really, really good for me, and it's uncomfortable all at the same time, which, to be in a place of discomfort at my age is not a bad thing, right? Because it means I'm having to expand, and I'm having to meet people that I would never meet before, who are adorable and fiery and just putting their hearts out on their sleeve, and that I love. That I really, 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 really love. And I realize that those are my people. The people who are willing to use their voice and wear their heart on their sleeve and come out and show up and raise their voices and stand in public and says, this is who we are. We're not apologizing for it. If you don't like it, move away, but we're not backing down. We're gonna show up because the world isn't gonna function right until we do. And it's such an honor in some ways to stand beside you and Marcia and people who are just themselves, but who are so unapologetically themselves. And it really helps me because I have such a history of wanting to be who you think I should be. And being with Okaeri forces me, frankly, to say, that's not my value to this organization. My value to this organization is to show up and use my voice right alongside Marcia and Stan and Alex and Barney and Gloria and Caitlin and all of us. And it's all of us together. And it's hard for me sometimes with my history to feel connected, like we're all connected. But even then, like last week, we had a planning meeting, and there was a point in time where I just sat and looked at everybody and thought, I love these people. This is totally cool. But I don't love these people because we're the same. I love these people because they know how to wear their heart on their sleeve in some way. And that's what connects us. And it's lovely to find that part of my tribe again.